Hello everyone and good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us for our session today. Before I hand over to Lindsay, who is, I promise, here, so just having a few connection issues, but she's definitely here. I just want to go through a few things that no doubt many of you have heard us say before, but this is a live session. So please feel free to say hello to us, use the chat. We love to hear from you and obviously find out where you're from. We will be doing Q&A at the end. So please, if you have any questions as we go along, use the question bar. It's just at the top next to chat questions. We will also be running a few feedback polls at the end, so your feedback's really important to us, so please take a few seconds towards the end of the session just to let us know what you think. But I'm really delighted for this session. So it's actually, we've had a lot of questions around this from the garden centre world as things have moved online. So I'm going to hand over to Lindsay to start our session on how garden centres can adapt to a sustainable and successful long-term online strategy. So Lindsay, I'll hand over to you.
Lovely. Thank you, Suzanne. Lovely to see you all today. I hope you are well. I can see it's sunny in some places, but not so much sunny in Manchester. So sorry about that, Daniel. We do have lovely sun in lovely Norfolk where I am. Thank you so much for having me back, Suzanne. It's been lovely to do so many webinars for you. If you haven't heard one of our webinars before, hopefully you're going to walk away with some actionable insights, especially today for garden centres or anything related to garden centres and gardening products. So I know firsthand what a journey you guys will have been on. Obviously, in terms of garden centres, some of you might be online a little bit. Some of you may be online a lot. Some of you may have had no internet presence whatsoever before COVID, and some of you still might have no internet presence. So what I'm going to be hopefully walking you through today is a number of just different strategies and factors to think about in terms of the COVID, big lockdown has declined, but hopefully in a good way that has just addressed the fact of you need to be online in some shape or form. So hopefully you've got a cup of tea, a chocolate biscuit. That's what I'd be doing if I'd be watching a webinar right now. This is recorded, so if I do run a little bit quickly, because I've put so much into today's session, you'll be able to watch the recording back. And as always, more than happy to take any questions. If you drop them in the chat, I'll be more than happy to take them at the end. And you never know, I always try to do a bit of interactivity and just doing a bit of picking on somebody and asking some questions and stuff as well. So for anybody who hasn't had their head stuck in soil for the last 3 or 4 months, we have actually had COVID-19. And I think for your industry, probably more than pretty much any other industries, lockdown created a lot of green fingers. No doubt you're all probably here today, not because you've had a lack of business, but probably because you've had people phoning, ringing, emailing. You might have had a website where you were doing e-commerce and you've literally had to turn the tap off because it has been so horrendously busy for you. I'm guessing you're everywhere in between. But as you can see in the graph in front of you, this is from July 2019. And the reason I wanted to share this graph with you is because, as you can see, like from June 2019 all the way to March this year, you can see that it's pretty flatline, pretty normal. And then lockdown hits and you can see it doesn't double. It almost like quadruples in the amount of people that are looking for the topic gardening, never mind, specific types of plants. So this just highlights the fact that although you might have had a target audience already, when people went into lockdown, and this isn't just in the UK, I mean, these searches here are just in the UK, but it's across various countries, gardening, fitness, crafts, baking, people were looking to pick up some hobbies or interests that either they loved and just didn't have time to do or learn something new. My learn something new has been skateboarding, although I haven't quite cracked the knack of that yet. But what I want to talk about with you this afternoon is thinking about how to get some of your digital marketing processes in place. If you are going to be thinking about investing in a website, then some really important things to think about, and also some other hints and tips along the way. So hopefully today, my afternoon session is going to be useful for you. But there's something really important when it comes to the internet. And if you've been to my webinars before, forgive me, because you'll have seen this slide before, but it is super duper important when it comes to online marketing. Success of being online, and COVID has just sort of expedited this and shown us is even more important, is that regardless of your organizational needs, people are using the internet. So what the real success is about finding that sweet spot in the middle. So let me just explain this for you. As an organization, you have the opportunity to be online or not, as the case may be. And many garden centres, many of the local ones I live near here in sunny Norfolk, there's, local independent garden centres. If I'm lucky, they might have a website. If I'm really lucky, they might show some of their products. But when we went into lockdown, and some of them are farm shops as well, and I've always shopped from my farm shop, but even before lockdown, I'm a very big fan of local buying from independent stores. Obviously I work with the big organizations, but I'm a big fan of buying local if I can. So I was going to my farm shop, purchasing products every week and coming home. When we went into lockdown, and we couldn't go out, and we were just supposed to go out for emergency products only, I didn't want to jump onto the bandwagon of going to buy from Tesco's or going to buy from Sainsbury's. I wanted to support my local garden centre farm shop. I couldn't order on their website. It said to phone. In one day, I tried phoning 25 times to get through to place my order. So my intent was like raging, like I really wanted to buy these products, but I couldn't get hold of them. I couldn't order on their website, and I was not only juggling against other people trying to ring them, I was juggling against their telephone line that was also used as their credit card line for taking payments as well. Now, I appreciate that none of us were expecting what was going on over the last few months, and none of us were expecting that garden centres, farm shops, fitness things were going to go through the roof either. So this is no disrespect to anybody who has struggled over the last few months. None of us saw this coming. What this has highlighted, though, is that regardless of COVID, I wouldn't say going back to normal, but regardless of some people going back to normal, there's still a huge amount of opportunity online. So as part of your organization, you have organizational objectives that you want to achieve, and you're on the internet to sell, whether that is just making people aware of your local garden centre that they can pop into, or if you want to go the whole hog and do the whole e-commerce thing. I'm going to touch on both of those this afternoon. But the thing is, you can't just have a website and expect people to find it. And you can't just have a website and use digital channels and just do broadcast selling, because that doesn't work. So you have your overall organizational objectives of obviously to generate revenue and profitable revenue. And then you have the human needs. And the human needs are the likes of you, me, Susanna, and everyone else on the internet that we're searching on the internet all of the time. And we really don't give two hoots about your organization's objectives. What we care about is making sure that when we're online, when we're searching for stuff, whether it's how to get rid of aphids, whether it's how to grow tomato plants, whether it's how to make sure my sunflowers don't fall over, whether it's how to buy seeds, we go onto the internet for those types of things. But what's actually happened in more recent months is we would normally, and I'm included, I might work in digital marketing, but I love going to the garden centre. I couldn't go. So where was I going? I was going to the internet for purchasing, for inspiration, for hints and tips and advice. So I was going for my reasons, not the organization's reasons. So it's trying to find that sweet spot in the middle of your organization's objectives, but also trying to find actually the problems that people are looking for online. So the first core takeaway I want to share with you today is wearing your customers' shoes, or wellies, perhaps subject to what the weather is. The first thing you need to be thinking about, if you are thinking about going all in with online marketing, or whether you're thinking, okay, well, we have a garden centre, we have dabbled on the internet a little bit, you might not have come about it from a customer's point of view. So you obviously sell your products, and I get that, but thinking about your customers' wants and needs. So actually, if you think about when your customers come into your garden centre, some will come in and know what they want. Some will come in and speak to your experts and want hints and tips and advice. Some people will come in and want landscaping advice and guidance. All of that is pure gold in terms of thinking about your customers from their point of view. If you come about online marketing from their point of view rather than from your point of view, you're much more likely to be successful online. Second to that, the better you know your customers, the cheaper they are to be targeting. And I'll come on to that more later when we come on to Google ads and Bing ads and things like that, because it's easy to set a website up. What I would strongly suggest is don't get just a friend of the family to do it, or don't get your daughter or son to do it just because they're in a younger generation. and because they perhaps use these tools personally, they're not coming about it from a commercial point of view. So it's really important to think about how that could be useful to you. Also, bearing in mind when we're thinking about customers is it's about thinking about it from a customer's point of view of just telling people when you're open. Because even if you're not thinking about selling online, but you're a garden centre that people do still have to physically come into, you need to make sure that your website and all of your channels are absolutely telling people when you're open. If you haven't changed your opening hours on your website and actually you're now operating in different hours, or if you've now opened your cafe or it's still closed, you need to tell people on your website, because 9 times out of 10, if you have opened your garden centre and people are not coming, it's probably because they're not sure if you're open or not. I've heard that a lot. Or they have been trying to look at your website and you haven't updated it, so they don't know if you're open or not. So people are not telepathic. They really need to be told what you're doing, what you're not doing, and how you're adapting to what's going on. They also want to know if you're changing how you order. There's some examples I'm going to share with you today, how there is some just purely online garden centres that literally just say we are currently taking orders, or we are currently not taking orders, because you are in a market that is literally flooded with people purchasing things at the moment. And also thinking about click and collect. So is that a service you're offering? And finally, advice, and also thinking about curbside pickup. So there's lots of things to think about. And if this isn't something that you've delved into before, there probably is quite a lot to take into today, but please don't feel overwhelmed. I'm trying to adapt for people that haven't done anything to people that maybe are doing e-commerce but want to do it better as well. So linked to that, it's really important that you listen to your audience, because if you listen to them, and too many organizations go, we need a website, let's get a website, we need to be on Facebook, let's jump on here, let's chuck some money at Google shopping. And to be brutally honest, you could have just thrown things anywhere at the moment and you probably would have been successful. But the massive gap and the huge opportunity that I'm seeing is missed at the moment is garden centres and farm shops. Literally the farm shop that I was referring to earlier, they literally took your order, gave you a receipt, and they not walked me off the premises, but I literally walked away. And I'm like, there is a huge missed opportunity there, because I am a loyal client and I come every week. But you've probably got now 100 times more customers than what you had before that weren't coming to you before. Why are you not collecting their email addresses and saying to them, can we add you to our email database? Because we'd love to keep you up to date on what's going on, and some offers that we have and some hints and tips. And that's the hugest gap I'm seeing at the moment. And obviously, I appreciate that the garden centre had no idea this was going to happen, and literally they were just fighting fire. But now things have calmed down a little bit. I would, if you're still firefighting a little bit, is start to think about, how can I make sure that these customers that have been flying through the doors or flying online, how can I make sure that that's sustainable? Because this might not happen ever again. In a way, God forbid, I hope it doesn't, coronavirus. But this is a very, very unique position and opportunity for you guys, and for you to be growing your market share as a garden centre and actually be able to have the opportunity that you have is huge. Because there's a lot of organizations that I've been speaking to as well that have literally had the opposite of you guys. Literally their business fell through the floor overnight and they weren't generating any business whatsoever because their product literally wasn't in demand. So last tip before we move on to some tangible stuff is consumers are the most cost-effective consultants you can hire. So listening to your customers, putting their shoes or wellies on and really putting them first, and understanding who your target audience is, although caveat to that, they will have changed a little bit. You might have your existing customers, but then a whole other target audience that you never thought would purchase from you and now are, maybe a younger generation of people. But thinking about the problem you're solving, absolutely staying front of mind, because you might have had customers that were buying you from before. They may be coming into your garden centre and purchasing from you. They've gone into lockdown. You didn't have a website, or they weren't able to purchase from you. They'll have gone elsewhere. So it's really important, if you do have data and you haven't been selling, that you make people aware that you are always there and you're always front of mind. So let's now look at some of the channels. So channels are really, really important, and I'm going to walk through each one of these channels this afternoon. But it's really important that your website is the hub of what you're doing. So you really need to invest in a great website, because it doesn't matter how good, if you've got amazing social media going on at the moment or amazing email marketing going on, if your website is not up to scratch and it isn't thinking customer centricity, then you're almost wasting your money. So I'm going to walk through each one of these channels in a second, but there's a couple more things that I just want to share with you that you really need to know before you think about even investing in digital marketing in any shape or form. First of all, thinking about your products. Now, I know if you sell seeds versus if you sell water features, the profit margins are going to be very different. But that said, you really need, before you start thinking about what you're going to invest in digital marketing, is you need to know what your profit margins are. And if you have been selling online and you're thinking about whether to ramp it up and invest in a really good e-commerce website or not, you need to know what your cost per sale is and what your conversion rate is. And just really thinking about what your popular products are as well. What I would also do is if you have a website already, or if you're thinking about having a website, including an e-commerce website, is treat it separately. So obviously use the data and insight you have in your physical garden center or garden centers, but treat it as a separate entity altogether, not as in separate business, but treat it as its own little profit center. Because yes, it will complement to what you're doing in store, but you really need to invest in it seriously. It shouldn't be we've got this website, you can have a go on it if you like. If you're going to take online marketing seriously, then you need to take it seriously and think about the facts and the figures around it. And think about, if you are going to invest in a website, the first things to think about is what platform. So the website that you have or you're going to have is the absolute hub of what you're doing. And it's really important to think about what you're going to list online. But more importantly from that, thinking about what platform you want to build your website on. So I touched on a few slides ago that actually, please don't give your online marketing to a family member, friend, a mate of a mate who does digital marketing, because this is a serious bit of investment that you're going to be making. And if you're just going to have a bit of a dabble at it, I would say don't bother. I would say you don't need to put a serious amount of money in it, but you need to treat it as a separate profit center. So if you're going to be building a website, get an expert to build your website for you. Please don't use a Wix website. Please don't use a Squared website. Please invest in a website like WordPress, WooCommerce, Magento, or perhaps Shopify. They are professional websites. They need to be professionally designed, because your website should be your best salesperson. And if your website doesn't reflect that, you're obviously great at running garden centers and marketing or sales within your garden centers, but online marketing is very different. So if you're going to invest in a website, make sure that you invest in an expert that can do it for you, a web agency, but thinking about it from a digital marketing point of view. So don't just go with a website agency if you're going to go agency and not do it yourself or employ somebody. Get an agency that has a digital factor to it and a user experience factor to it, because web agencies are great, but they don't always come about it from a usability point of view. So in terms of the website choices, WordPress, Magento, Shopify, or those three would be the main ones off the top of my head. Secondly, think about what you want to list online, because you probably have thousands upon thousands of SKUs, unless you are literally a garden center that just sells roses. Even then, you might have hundreds of roses. Typically, if you're a garden center, you sell water features, seeds, garden furniture, bulbs. There is a whole plethora of what you're selling online. And if you're going to be selling stuff online, you want to make sure it's available. And you want to make sure it's available, and don't just add it onto the website and take it off. So really think about the experience you want people to have online. And the design is where you should really get an expert in place. And I'm going to share some hints and tips with you in a second. But I've also got a number of examples here to share with you. But also think in terms of your website and the people that come into your garden centers. They don't just come in and go, oh, I need a tomato plant, or oh, I need some sweet corn seeds. They come in for other things as well. So how can you recreate that online? And that's what I want to share with you this afternoon. So there are around 8 things a key website should have to really sing and really operate well within if you're going to be building a website. First of all is the navigation. So here you can see on Dobby's, they've got their menu across the top, and then they've got their navigation. And the navigation is very key because it categorizes how people find your product. Now, as I said earlier, people are not telepathic. You would be looking at your website all day, every day and go, okay, well, bulbs will be here, here and here. But when people come onto your website, first note is 80% of people do not come in via your homepage. So make sure that your navigation is clear across every part of your website on every page. But make sure you think about your navigation and your categorization of products, because this is absolutely critical. And I'm not going to name the garden centre, but one of them is on here, and I'm actually promoting them in a good way, not a bad way. But there is a garden centre not too far from where I live, and I was looking for a water feature in latter part of last year, and I went on their website. You know, they're a pretty hefty garden centre, and I went on their website and I could see they had water features. It was a struggle to find them because they only had limited stock on their website. So I thought, well, let me try and buy it. And it was just such a rubbish collection. So I was like, oh, I'll venture into their store in the end. And I had to go in, but I really wanted to buy online. And it was the categorization and the search facility and the fact that although they had it in their store, they didn't have it listed on their website. That really frustrated me as a potential buyer. The second thing that is really important is search. So at the top here, you can see Dobby's has a search function. And this is really important as well. But it is a bit of a beast, because if people are looking for something, they might not go to your navigation. They might do search. So they might just type at the top and they expect to find answers. And this is probably the biggest thing that a lot of e-commerce businesses struggle with. I worked with Bacardi a couple of years ago, and I was upskilling all of their European team on the online consumer supermarket brands, and, you know, how supermarket search works, etc. And even, you know, the supermarkets, even the ones that spend a huge amount online, do not get their search function right. You'd think potentially Waitrose would have it right. Waitrose's online offering is pretty weak. Hopefully they're not on today. Their online offering is pretty weak. The guys that really have their online offering sorted is Asda and Ocado, in my opinion. Literally, if you do a search, it's very customer focused and it's really good results. Waitrose's is not very good and Sainsbury's is not very good. And it's ironic, isn't it? Because they're the higher end searcher, they're the higher end supermarkets, but actually the Ocado you'd expect because they're online. But Asda are sort of a more budget range of supermarket. You wouldn't think that their website would be as good as these guys, but actually they really know their audience. They've really put their customers first and they've really invested in it well. The third key tip on your website is having clear call to actions. Now, this might sound like rocket science, but it's amazing how many people build their websites and they don't really think about having clear call to action. So a clear to action is a buy now button. So if you have all your products listed, don't just list it without a buy now button. Make sure it has a clear buy now button on your products and it's as easy as possible. The other key tips with your website is make sure there's an email sign up. So I was talking with a gentleman this morning in the garden sector, and he has an email newsletter at the bottom of his website, but it doesn't tell me why to sign up. It just says sign up to our e-newsletter. Why should I? What value are you going to give me? So here you can see Frost as an example. They say sign up to our newsletter for offers, hints, tips, etc. You could go a stage further. If you have a look at our website and look at our sign up newsletter, it asks you questions. It says, what are your challenges at the moment? And you tick boxes and then you get emails that are relevant. This is really important because if people are looking for inspiration online, they might not be in that position to purchase today. But if they are thinking about, oh, well, actually, I'm just starting out in gardening, or I'm about to re-landscape my back garden, I could really do with some hints and tips right now. Yes, I want to sign up. So make it as obvious as possible. Second to this is your contact details. So here again, Frosts have been really good at their contact details of all their garden centres down the right-hand side. They also tell you every day what times they're open from until, and especially during COVID, times are very different. And they also have all their social media buttons across the bottom or top of their website on every single page. So again, if people are coming to your website, don't assume, oh, let me go and see if Frost is on Facebook. Make it really obvious and make sure it's on every one of your pages. And finally, credibility and reviews. Trustpilot, people do look at reviews on things, especially if they're purchasing online versus into your store. So obviously, if they were coming into your garden centre, if they've purchased from you before, might be that you have guarantees and they know. But if they're buying from you online, and the amazing thing about being able to purchase online is you might be in lovely remote North Norfolk, but actually you could have someone that's purchasing from Scotland or Cornwall. So people might not be aware of your brand, so they need credibility. So having credibility and reviews and any awards on your website is really, really useful. Second tip in regards to your website before to move on to some of the other channels is content. And there is a number of reasons why content on your website is super duper important. So when I mean content, I don't mean products here. I don't mean rose bushes and plants and water features. I mean content. So I think about educating, inspire, and entertain. So if you think about, and the examples I've got here are from Not Cuts, if you think about if people are getting started in gardening, how to start a compost heap, that is a blog post. Blog posts, video content are a huge factor for a number of reasons, and there are a huge amount of advantages, and let me just chat about them. The first reason for having content on your website is Google and other search engines. Google, Bing, and whatever search engine is your preference, regardless to what country you're in. Search engines look at your website and see how often you update it. And yes, you'll be updating on a regular basis from a product point of view, but if you can create content that people are linking to or sharing on social, like how to create a compost heap or some inspiration about, how to be a bee-friendly garden, that sort of content is really, really useful. Second of all is when you're creating social media content or social media posts, it's a great thing to be able to post about it, because if you don't have blog content or don't have advice and you literally just have products on your website and you've tasked somebody or an agency to be running your social media, what are they going to talk about? They can only talk about products so much, because people are not on social media to be sold to. They're on there to be educated, inspired, and entertained. So they'll probably be actually linking to other people's blogs, which means they're being helpful, but they're sending people elsewhere. Third to that is email marketing. If you do have an email database, then what's more important than actually emailing people and telling them about your latest blog post or seasonal things to be doing in your garden? So you're very lucky in the gardening sector. You have a huge amount of content to talk about. You're not like some other sectors that I work in that are really quite dull, potentially. So you have advice, things that you could be talking about. You could be talking about inspiration and education areas. So let's now move on to some of the other channels. So we've already talked about the website, and your website is really important. Sorry, just one more tip on that website thing is think about Google Analytics. You want to make sure that Google Analytics is installed on your website. If you're using something like Shopify already, that's great, but Shopify doesn't have 100% accuracy on its figures. So make sure you do have Google Analytics installed on your website so you can see what's going on, and also importantly, what's not going on within your website. And one more tip, if you think about people purchasing online, it might be that you want to have a live chat on your website. And if people are looking for help or advice, then live chat might be able to help with that. But as I've said already, people are not telepathic. So they don't know if you're open or closed. They don't know what channels you're on. They don't know if you offer click and collect. They don't know if you offer curbside pickup. So really think about assume people know nothing, and really make it obvious for people and remind people what you're doing and what you're not doing. So once you've got your website up and running, you need to plan your digital marketing, because you might have the best looking website in the world, but if you are not using attract, engage, and convert, then you're just waiting for people to come and find your website. And then unfortunately, that's not going to happen. So you need to then have a digital strategy in place. So ultimately, your digital strategy should be made up of attracting your audience on the right channel at the right time, engaging them. So engaging them in conversation, engaging them to look further into your website, and then ultimately converting them. So converting them to come into your physical store. There's nothing stopping you using your website to get people to come into your physical store. So you could say, we've got so summer holidays, lots of garden centres normally say, get the kids in the garden centre and then we'll do some free planting sessions. There's nothing still stopping you doing that, but you need to tell people what you're doing, and you also need to tell people what safety measures you have in place. And so finally converting them. So converting them to come into your store, converting them to sign up to your e-newsletter, or converting them into purchase, which is ultimately what we all want. But as part of that plan, if you're doing digital marketing at the moment and you're not generating any revenue, any website visitors or any tangible benefit whatsoever, I'll be thinking about what you're doing and just stopping it and rethinking about what you're doing. Because as I've said already, you might be in a lucky position that because you're in a sector that has just gone through the roof, you are being found and you are generating a bit of business. But that doesn't mean what you're doing is successful. If you tweaked it and followed a real strategy, you could expedite that and grow it significantly. And I want to talk about some of that this afternoon. But what you really need to think about before you do that is aligning it to your overall organization's goals, because it's really important to make sure, as I touched on earlier, that you do treat your website as not a separate business, but its own entity. But it shouldn't be siloed and treated separately overall. It should be linked into, if your garden centre as a whole, or if your organisation wants to be generating, I don't know, £2 million this year, then you will have people walking in. But how can your website enhance that and help drive revenue as well? So it has to be linked to what your overall organisation's goals are. Because if you just do sort of social media or digital marketing as sort of a, well, we'll give it a go, it's only ever going to be a bit of a, a bit of a hobby, and it's never going to really take off the ground. But if you really take it seriously, and when I mean take it seriously, it doesn't have to cost a lot of money, but just align it to where you're trying to achieve. And if you task someone internally with this task, or you task an agency, then if you tell them what you're trying to achieve, what your revenue goals are, what your profit margins are, then they should be able to tangibly be able to generate the results for you. If you don't give them that information, then you're almost setting them up for a fall to begin with. Or if you're doing it yourself, you're almost setting yourself up for a fall, because you're not going to know if it's worked or not. You need to have that measure in the sand. So as part of that, I would really get the Excel sheet out, because having a strategy and having a plan is absolutely critical. It doesn't need to be a 40-page document. It really is think about, okay, what are our objectives? And they can be smart. Who is our target audience? Who are the people that generally buy from us? Why do they buy from us? Why do they come into our garden centre? How can we try and get them online? What are their challenges? Why do they love buying from us? What is our USP? Not because we're local. Like, why do people come in? Is it because you give the best advice on how to grow the best roses, or you give the best advice on how to grow vegetables, or you're really empathetic and you're really friendly and you give amazing customer service and you really inspire people to into gardening, as an example? So that's what you would have within your strategy document. You may be thinking, Lindsay, that doesn't sound digital at all. Well, no, it doesn't, because actually digital is no different for me saying, here's a telephone. You can't use this tool until you've actually understood who your target audience is and what you want to achieve by that. When you know that, then you can start to get the amazing tools out and think about what that looks like. But linked to that, before you even jump on the channels, is thinking about a content calendar as well. Because as I've already said, you can have a website, but if you don't have a content calendar and you're not thinking about creating content, what you're going to put on social media, what channels you're going to use, is, especially if you're busy, that stuff goes by the wayside. So you might be generating sales at the moment, but as things start to go back into normality, if you are not doing email marketing, social media, SEO, your sales are going to fall through the floor. So if you want to maintain what you're doing or grow what you're doing, you really need to think about having that plan in place. And when you have that plan in place, it will ultimately then tell you. So if your audience is a certain type of audience, you can then talk to your expert internally or talk to an agency and say, right, this is our target audience. What channels should we be on? What should we be doing? And it would be your audience dictating what channels you should be on, not you. And that takes us back to that sweet spot earlier. So I was talking to a lady last week, actually earlier this week, forget what week we're in, and she doesn't do garden centering, but she does Pilates, and she does these amazing classes. And she said, I've got my website up and running. It's doing okay, but I want to increase it. And she's already at the top of Google and she's doing search engine stuff. But we were like, you need to be all over Instagram, because people that are into fitness are on Instagram, And she says, I don't have time and I don't want to be on there. And I said, don't wish to be rude, but it's not about you. It's about your customers. And if you want to generate business, you have to be where your customers are. So it's not about being on all of the channels, but it's being on the right channels, talking about the right things at the right time. So let's jump in to social media. So social media might intimidate some of you. It is, out of all of the channels, it's probably one of the hardest to do, because it takes a huge amount of time, but there's a huge amount of insight in there. So I've got a number of tips and I've got some examples to share with you as well, including some video content. So think about the right channels for gardening. I know through being on social media myself, gardening works really well on Instagram, and it also works really, really well on Facebook. Instagram, because it's very visual, you can do video content, you can engage with people. Facebook, especially if you're trying to engage with the older audience, the ones that are not on Instagram, then it's a great channel as well. But obviously that's just UK focused. So if you're from another country today, then do go and have a look on the social media channels, and don't look for garden centre, because you're going to find garden centre. Think about your target audience. So as an example, if you are a garden centre that really want to engage with people that have their own allotments, or people that love wildlife, then go onto those channels and do searches for those terms. So do a search on allotments, do searches on gardening, do searches on gardeners, do searches for, actually specific types of plants and areas of interest, because that's where you'll find your target audience, and that will dictate to you what channels you should be on. In terms of the channels themselves, when you do decide what channels to be on, make sure in the bio and any other field you have on the social media channels, you use keywords. So keywords would be things like garden centre. If you're based in certain locations, make sure you have those in there, because some people will go to Facebook, first of all, to see if you're open, if they know about you already, but second of all, they go onto those channels and do searches themselves. A lot of people use Facebook and Instagram like they do Google. So they do searches for answers to things or inspiration. Also tell your audience in the bio what to expect from you. So don't say we're a garden centre in Norwich. Tell them that you're a garden centre and where you're based, but tell them what they're going to get from you. So if I was a garden centre, regardless of where I was, I would say, we're a garden centre. We're passionate about helping people create their best allotments or their favourite allotments. We will share hints, tips and advice on all things about creating your favourite allotment, as an example. And you might also say, please feel free to DM us for advice. Put your most social media channels on your website, as I've shared already. Post at the right times. So post at the right times that your audience is on there. Social media is not Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. It might be that gardeners are out in the garden during the weekend. So it might be the evening on Saturdays or evening on Sundays, or while Gardener's World is on, it's actually the best time to engage on channels. Ask questions on social media, because that really helps to engage people, but do not hard sell. And finally, be aware that social media is rented space, i.e. if Facebook shut down tomorrow and you've got 10,000 followers on there, you could quite quickly lose them. So here are some examples of some great social media content that I found on garden websites. These ones are from Frosts, and they know that this one here, they know that grasses seem to be very popular for this year. So they're telling people that it's very popular. So if you're looking for inspiration for this year, grasses are very popular. They also then share that you can grow your own and you can dry them, and here's how to do it. And they link to their blog post. They also then talk about how they're doing free webinars. So if you are doing free things, you need to tell people on the social media channels themselves. So always think inspire, educate, entertain. Never think sell, because if you think about why you're on social media, you are never on there to be sold to. Here is another example. So this example, I'm going to have to ask Susanna to click the play button for me, please. Thank you, Susanna. So this is from Ellen Mary. So Ellen Mary is not a garden centre, but she is one of my good friends, actually. She is doing a how-to video. So she's doing a how-to video of how to take basil cuttings. So it's a simple video that she's just doing and just giving hints and tips to people. So it's a really simple video. It doesn't need a lot of editing at all if you plan it. She's just put some music in the background. Now, a great tool if you're thinking about doing video content is InShot. It's an app that you can get on your phone, and it is really, really easy to use. So I'd highly recommend video content, how-to videos. And sometimes people think, what can I do a video about? I don't really know what to video about. You guys know your stuff when it comes to gardening. So think about the most popular things that people are asking during the season, or if you've noticed that a lot of new gardeners have come in and they're asking for advice, turn that into a piece of video content, because that's the sort of stuff that people want. Here is another example. So this is from a garden centre. Let me just click the next button.
Always starting to need dead header again. A lot of people maybe don't understand what deadheading is. Deadheading is this here, your flowering bud.
Gonna let him tell you what deadheading is.
Gone. It's got a dead flower on it. Take the full flowering bud off, like so. Keep doing that to your baskets. Any that are gone like that style there, that's the flowers starting to go. Get them off and it'll keep producing loads and loads of flower. If you don't take these buds off, then they will stop flowering.
So that video, he does a Sunday night advice, as you can see here. It's a Facebook live, so he's done it live. And it was just a garden centre I came across when I was looking for examples. So Rosebank Garden Centre, if you are here today, well done. It's a great video. You can see it's not like professionally done, but it's not about professional. It's about giving advice. And I want you guys to put in the chat how many views you think that video has had. So it was posted on the 31st of May. Have a guess at how many views that video has had. Just drop it in the chat and we'll see what people think. We have a range, okay. 13,600. That video has had 13,600 views. Don't get me wrong. How many of you would love to have that many visitors in your garden centre at any one time? I don't know about you, but if I was a garden centre, I would love 13,000 people in my garden centre at any one time, because out of 13,500 people, there are going to be some that purchase, aren't there? So if you think about it like that, that is a huge reason to think about why you should give advice, guidance and inspiration away for free, because it attracts an audience. And when they listen to people like this lovely guy here just giving away advice, people will buy from you because they want to know. Obviously this is quite a basic tutorial of like deadheading, and he's not just telling you how to deadhead, he's telling you the whys, and then it helps educate people as well. So it's a very, very simple video, but a great video. It's short and engaging. So it's just a very basic video, and I wanted to share that with you because some people go, oh, I really need to plan it, and you don't. That is not professionally done. Okay, so hopefully that gives you some inspiration on social media. Now let's move quickly onto SEO. So SEO is not a dark art. SEO is basically keywords that help people find your product or your service online. But it does need to think about, you do need to create your list. And especially if you are thinking about actually selling online, then you do need to take this into consideration. But how do you do that? Well, first of all, if you don't want to sell your products online and you just want to be found as a garden centre, then you need to make sure that you are listed on Google. So here I've done a screen grab and I literally just typed in garden centre near me. Now people search that all the time because they might not know that Highways Garden Centre is down the road or Green Pastures is down the road. So they'll literally be just thinking garden centre near me. So the thing you need to do is, obviously you wouldn't want to optimize for garden centre near me, but you want to make sure your Google My Business listing is listed and it shows that you're a garden centre and it shows where you're based and it has keywords in it linked to garden centre, because then you stand a chance of actually coming up locally like this. If you have more than one garden centre, then you need to set up Google My Business for each of your centres. Second to this, you might be thinking, okay, well, that's great. And whether I'm a local garden centre or I have national ones, you need to be doing this. But if you're thinking about being found for other things, then what should you take into consideration? Well, first of all, is getting those good old customer shoes or wellies on again and thinking like a customer. So here I just thought, I was thinking about the plants I've got in my back garden, and I'm definitely not a gardening expert, so please don't ask me any questions on it. But I've got a hosta in the back garden. So I just thought, well, how do I grow hostas? So there's a number of ways you can find out what people are searching for online to then think about, actually, how can I create that content, or what are people searching on in terms of tomato plants, small tomato plants, unusual tomato plants, thinking about it from that point of view. The first thing to do is just start to type like a customer, because what Google will show you, as you can see here in my first little screen grab, how to grow hostas, how to grow tomatoes. That list there is not just a random list. That is a list in popularity of what people are typing in. Now, I hadn't told Google at that time I was going to be typing in hostas. That was the top thing on the list. So it's really important to think about, if you are a garden centre that sells hostas, then there is one blog post for you or a piece of video content for you. The second thing you can do is use your Google Analytics and see what people are searching on. You can also use a great tool called Answer the Public. So if you go to Answer the Public, it's a free tool, just type in hostas and it will tell you what people are searching on. Now, obviously, if you've got a wide range of products, just get the basics on. And this is where categorization across the top is really important. So if you have vegetables, you'd probably have vegetable plants, fruit plants, etc., there. So it's really important to categorize that and create a list, but also think about it from a blog content point of view, which I'm going to come on to later. But as you can see here on the right hand side, you've then got how to grow hostas, when to plant hostas, hostas for sale. You know, people are searching for this stuff a huge amount of time. So if you are going to be thinking about SEO seriously, then again, get your Excel sheet out, create all your keywords, do your research, and then start to think about, okay, what ones are we going to prioritize and what ones are in season and how do we prioritize that? Because obviously you do have seasonal products, so you will want to seasonalize it from that point of view in terms of priority. By doing that, though, what that then means is when you type in something like hosta plants, ignore these images here because I'm going to come onto those in a moment. You can see here where my big orange arrow is. If you do SEO on your website, it means that if I'm searching hosta plants, then you can potentially come up at the top of Google, which is classed as organic SEO. But linked to that, as I just touched on before in terms of content, you want to maximize your content. So people just don't just search on hosta plants, they search on how to grow hosta plants, grow hostas in pots, etc., etc. So this is where you can create blog content, and I'm going to come on to video content in a second. But as you can see here, if you can create a blog post with growing hostas in pots, as an example, because people search on that, then your blog can potentially get to the top of Google. You can also then use that blog to create video content, and you've got some video examples on the left-hand side here. You can then use that blog post for email marketing. You can use it for social media. You could use it for Google Ads. You could even potentially turn it into a podcast, because a lot of people are listening to podcasts. Podcast listening is absolutely huge and people are really not taking advantage of it, but it is immense and I would highly recommend it. So now let's quickly jump on to email marketing. So email marketing, again, is a huge missed opportunity in my book. I don't know about you, but the number of emails I receive every day is huge. And most of them are just trying to give me an offer. They're just like, have this percentage off, have that percentage off. But if you think about people, they're not necessarily driven by price, especially gardeners. They're driven about, you know, what's in season. They might be driven by inspiration. And this example here, which if Susanna, if you can press play, please. This is an email I received a couple of days ago from Not Cuts. And it shows here, it's thinking about bee-friendly plants. It's inspirational, but it does have some sales stuff at the bottom. So it's getting me to open the email because of inspiration at how to be a bee-friendly garden. Then it's giving me hints and tips. And then if I want stuff to purchase, then it's at the bottom. And it's also telling me if I do want to come into the store, they are open and what guidance they've put in place. So that's a great email to be thinking about customers first, not just we need to drive push on offers. There's another email on the next slide, which we'll just jump over to. No, there isn't. There's another email later. Sorry, I forgot about that. Now let's move on to CRO. So for those of you that are not familiar with CRO is short for conversion rate optimization. So you're probably thinking, Lindsay, that still makes no sense to me whatsoever. Basically, what it means in plain English is helping more people to say yes to something on your website. I.e., if you get 1,000 visitors to your website a day and you get 100 sales, how can you make 1,000 visitors make 200 sales or 300 sales or 400 sales? The thing is with digital marketing, people think you need to get more traffic to your website, but the most cost-effective thing to do and to reduce your cost but increase your profit revenue and increase your basket size is actually get your existing traffic to buy more from you or buy from you. So increasing your conversion rate. So it's about improving the journey on the website. Now, that isn't an easy task and it requires a CRO expert or thinking about the customer's shoes and thinking about where people get stuck. Now, you might think that it's a money issue why people don't purchase, but you'd be absolutely wrong. There was a stat that was released a little while ago and a piece of research carried out. So 10 people were given credit cards. So literally, it wasn't a money issue. 10 people were given credit cards and they were taken to a website and they were said, we want you to purchase this plant. So they were given the money and they were told what to purchase. Out of 10 of them, how many out of 10 do you think actually managed to purchase the product? Please put in the chat what you think the answers were. Was it 1? Was it 2? Was it 8? Was it 10? Okay, wide ranging. Close, Peter. The Peters have got close. Jill got close. It was 2 out of 10. And the reason it was 2 out of 10 is because the journey wasn't thought of, because it wasn't a money thing at all. They had the money. They were told what product to buy. It was just so complicated. They just got stuck and they couldn't purchase the product, which is absolutely ridiculous. When you're given the money, you're told what to purchase. Should have been all 10. So CRO is about thinking about the customer. And even if you do some basic things, you probably look at your website all day, every day, so you know where everything is. Think about getting someone that doesn't look at your website all day, every day, and just give them a ring or email them and say, would you mind having a look at my website? And I want you to purchase a hoster, as an example. How easy is it? So obviously you can give them a credit card and then give them a refund back, or just get them to get as far as they can through the purchase process and just ask them where they get stuck. It might be that they couldn't find the buy now button. It might be that there was a field that just had a sticky problem with it. Really think about getting other people to have a look at your website, because if you don't do that, it's really hard for people. You're just basically going to put more people in at the top of the funnel, but actually you could actually be generating more sales from the people that are already visiting your website. So with the web experience, never assume. And this example is a good one. So Highways Nursery here, they've got 3 good bullet points at the top of their website telling people their delivery times, where they deliver to, etc., etc. So think about, why do people buy from you? Is it because you've got award-winning plants? Is it because you do next day delivery? Is it because you give free advice? They are key things that you want to be shouting about on your website. Make it as easy as possible to purchase, and make sure that if you don't have stock, you tell people. Some websites do this really well, some websites do not. So in a website experience, if you don't have stock, you've got a product and you don't have stock, put out of stock. Why not sign up to here and we will email you when we do have stock, or currently not in stock. Expectations of delivery are this. You can still order, but you're going to be waiting 3 weeks. So really think about that. Another thing to bear in mind, and this is an interesting example I saw here. I've sort of got rid of the brand so you can't see it. But this is a garden centre website I went on last night. And a lot of people fall into this trap. You go on the website and within 10 seconds you sign up and get 10% off your first order. And I had this experience myself on another brand of website a couple of weeks ago. And I was going to buy the product anyway. So first of all, I was going to buy the product anyway. But you've given me 10% off. So why would I not take that 10% off? So what I would say in things like this is encourage people to sign up for newsletters, but don't necessarily give them an offer. I would put that pop-up if they were heading for the exit. So if they were heading for the cross on the right-hand side, that's when I would pop up with an offer, or I would do offer as part of a checkout cart. But this example here, this next slide here is, Susanna, if you don't mind hitting play for me, this website has the best user experience and best customer focus I've seen in a significant amount of time. So this is a pure player. So a pure player is an online garden center. But look at the experience I'm having. As soon as I go on the website, it says, we want to give you a better experience. What type of gardener are you? And I click the questions and it takes me to where I want to go. So it then takes me to the part of the website that is really useful. If I don't need that stuff, I can just click off. But it just really inspired me and gave me a great experience. And then it says understand pot sizes. And if I clicked on that, it then really visually showed me their pot sizes. So they've really thought about their customer experience. So if I was looking to increase my conversion rate or my spend or think about digital marketing, I would highly recommend going to look at this website and just look at it from a customer experience point of view of what that is, because I was really, really impressed with them. I think the only other thing they could be doing, and they're not, is thinking about, you could say book an advice session. So you could say book a Zoom call or book a WhatsApp face call where you talk to one of our gardeners and they give you some hints and tips, because I think that's the biggest thing that I'm seeing missing on any garden centres at the moment. I mean, I'd be going into a garden centre and going, oh, I really need help. I've got this shady bit in my garden. Nothing's growing. What should I grow there? Well, as much as I search on the internet, I I want to talk to somebody. I want to talk to a human being. So if Crocus or Not Cuts or any of the other garden centres offered that, I would probably book a session, regardless of where that garden centre was. If they offered that as a service, I booked a session. Yep, 7 p.m. tonight. I'll be eating my dinner. As soon as I've had my dinner, I've got this session with Bill, and I can ask Bill, I've got this shady pot on my garden. Let me show you on FaceTime. Look, it's here. And he might go, okay, I've just got the plant. Let me walk around the garden centre. What do you think to this? Perfect, Bill. Yeah, love it. And actually, what about this and what about that? And you're going to increase your conversion rate. So really think about it from that point of view. Okay, let's wrap up with Google Ads. This is not going next. Go next slide. Susanna, can you click the next slide for me, please? It doesn't seem to want to work. Thank you. So let's finally move on to ads. So it's very easy if you want more business to think, let's just use Google Ads or Bing Ads or Badu Ads subject to where we are, because it does get you to the top of Google instantly and does get you to the top of Badu and Bing instantly, and social media if you want to get in front of people. But what I would say is throwing more money at something doesn't mean you're going to generate more business. So as an example, if you're not generating business at the moment, throwing money at something is just like chucking money at the wall. So you really need to know your figures, ensure you're tracking your sales properly, and do it in a test control environment. So I'd do some CRO research. I would think about who my target audience is, and I would just put a little bit of money and do some test and learn campaigns for that before I think about really ramping up my revenue, because it can generate a significant amount of money. And the advantage it does have is you can turn it on, turn it off. And I know some garden centres have been doing that because they can control it. So during COVID, they may have been receiving thousands of orders. So they turn their Google shopping off. And then when they have it under control, they turn it on a bit, let some in, and then they turn it off. So it has huge control, but it can still run away with you very, very quickly if you don't understand how Google Ads, Badu Ads, social media ads work, because it is a whole specialist area. But as my screen shows here, it's basically these ads that you see at the top. They're called Google Shopping or Bing Shopping. And just as a word of something to do consider, Bing is fantastic. Too many organizations do not advertise on Bing. Don't just think Google Shopping if you're in the UK. Do thinking about Bing ads, because if you buy a Microsoft laptop, Bing is the natural search facility that is opened when people open their laptops, and people don't necessarily think about changing it. So finally, one more platform I forgot, email marketing. Now, I have talked about this briefly already, but really think about education, inspire, or entertaining, and build an email list focused on value and not selling. This email is one I received last night, and I had to put it in because I loved it, because it's basically saying, you're invited to our flower show. It tells you how to enter, why to enter. Why did I love this? Well, I loved it for a number of reasons. It's inspiring me. It's inspiring me to think about entering stuff. It's inspiring me to engage with them. So they're going to get more engagement with me. And ultimately, what's it also probably going to do? Maybe thinking, oh my God, I need to purchase some plants if I want to show my garden or my allotment. So it's a very clever way of inspiring, educating, and selling. So it's a great example, which I loved, and it came in last minute, so I had to add it to my slides. And I think this next one, I've already shared that one with you, so we can jump over that. So let's just wrap up on measurement, because if you're not measuring what you're doing online, you can't improve it. So if you have taken some inspiration today, and I hope you have, hopefully I've given you a number of hints and tips, but don't do any of this without measuring where you are at the moment. Because if you just jump on, you're not going to know what's worked and what hasn't. And what I would do if I was you, I would create some high level figures. And this sheet here is a great example of just thinking about, okay, what do we want to achieve in our garden centre and online? What's our average order? What do we want our average order to be? What are all of our total outgoings, and what is our profit margin? And then you can look at this sheet once a week, once a day if needs be, with things are going really, really well. And you can work out if things are working for you or not. And if you report to people higher up the food chain, then this example is a really good one, because they don't necessarily understand Twitter or Instagram or YouTube, because it's not their job to. What they do understand is figures, revenue, and profit. So that sheet is a really good sheet to just show them and demonstrate to them. But just to wrap up, wear your customers' shoes, because they are the most important people in everything that's going on. And hopefully through my key takeaways today, I've hoped hopefully share with you about understanding your online marketing from a customer's point of view, knowing your figures, knowing your audience, website being built for your audience, using the right channels, and finally measuring what you're doing. Now, while I take questions, I'm just going to leave this sheet up because, as always, we are offering a free consultancy session to 2 lucky people. So all you do have to do is go to this link now. We'll leave it until midnight tonight, and we'll pick 2 random garden centres or any other type of organisation that's been listening today, and you can have free 2 30-minute free consultations, 1 30-minute each for you. And I'll leave this up while we take questions, if that's all right, Susanna.
Yep, that's great. And Lindsay, just so you know, I've actually popped all of those links into the chat as well, so people can click through. Thought that'd be useful. We've not had too many questions through, but actually there was a really great question that came through from Peter when you were talking about the advice, and it's in the chat. And it says, would you consider charging, or do you think they should consider charging for the advice or that consultancy call?
That's a really good question, Peter. I think I would perhaps do it for free to start with. I'm just trying to bring this into life. So what they do sometimes, what makeup brands do sometimes when you go into store, is they'll say, book a free consultation. We'll take £10 off your card. And then if you purchase anything, you get that money back. So you could potentially offer that. If I was you, though, I'd start to just do it for free to begin with, because if you give people advice, it might be just book 10-minute slots, or you ask people beforehand, you know, what are you looking, what's your challenge? And they can put it in. Just test it. If it goes like wildfire and you do loads of sales, then you don't need to sell. You don't need to charge for the time. If you're getting a lot of people that are taking advantage and they're not purchasing from you, then it might be that you say you pay £10 and you get it back if you purchase something from us. So I would do a test and learn on that, if I'm honest, Peter. But it's a very good question.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of just during lockdown, I've seen a lot of people doing those kind of advice calls, and a lot of them offer a discount, not even a monetary amount. So it could be if maybe they only buy 1 or 2 small value items, that maybe it's a 10% discount.
Yeah,
it's a nice way to incentivize people to buy as much as you recommend. Lindsay, the other question that came through was from Mandy, and she said a previous webinar advised against using hashtags for Facebook, but you suggest that people search on it like they do on Google. Should we use hashtags on Facebook, or how do they take advantage of that search on Facebook?
Okay, good question, Mandy. So first of all, Facebook doesn't just look at your posts, it looks at the name of your Facebook page and the posts on your page. So it doesn't have to have hashtags in it. So when you fill out your page on Facebook and you've got your about us, your bio, etc., etc., Google looks at all of those. Facebook looks at all of those things as well. So I would use not hashtags but keywords. A keyword doesn't have to have a hash in front of it to be a keyword. So first of all, that's one, helps answer that question. But in the last couple of weeks, the whole view of hashtags on Facebook has changed. So it may have even been us that said don't use hashtags on Facebook, because people have been using them, but Facebook wasn't using them at all. Facebook have finally seen the light and are now using hashtags as a facility. So people can search based on hashtags. So hurrah, they've finally got their act together and actually looking at it like Instagram and Twitter. So I would do both, if that makes sense. So hopefully that answers your question, Mandy.
Okay, we haven't had any other questions come through, but I think we are over the hour. Yep. So Lindsay, thank you so much for your time. There's so much useful stuff in there, and I hope everyone has found that useful. We will obviously send you an email which contains all of these links to different resources for you, and obviously this will be available on demand as well. But Lindsay, thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Thank you. Lovely to see you all, and take care.